What's going on? So I went to a party and I've been noticing these millennials and kids, especially boys, been shaving their heads. And what's happening is these kids are starting to lose their hair. And we're going to tell you not just kids losing their hair, but why people lose their hair more today than ever in time. And so it's about why men are getting bald, and also there's sections here about women and how they're starting to lose their hair, how their hair breaks. And I've seen kids complain, my hair's falling out. They can't figure out why. And so, a couple things. Obviously, some of this is inherited, okay? And it's, I'm not going to try to pronounce this word, but it's DHT. And yes, there is hair loss, it can be inherited, okay? And we're not going to get into that. We're going to get into why it's prematurely happening. Okay, so right now, 2/3 of men will have hair loss before they even reach 35, which is kind of unheard of. I mean, um, when I was growing up, we rarely saw teenagers and people in their 20s shaving their hair because they had hair. We had a lot of hair. Actually had it kind of long. And here you see these kids in their 20s and 30s shaving their hair. And they do it for a couple of reasons. One, they have it's a self-esteem issue, okay, by having hair on like receding hairlines, and there's a whole bunch of psychology on that. The other thing is when they shave their hair, for some reason they think they're more masculine. And a lot of movie stars shave their heads, the badasses in Hollywood, and they're older guys and they shave their hair, so they think it's more masculine. They feel more dominant, okay, when they do that. And for some reason, they look taller. I don't know how they become taller but they do look taller. And we all know that women like tall men. I mean, women prefer men that are 6 foot, period. No questions asked. They always want a tall guy. And so there's a little bit of psychology going there with these young men. Now, a couple things when you're balding. Okay, there are some scientific conditions that can. Hey, thanks for coming on. Who's ever listening? I'm going to get to some good stuff. How to slow down. Look at me, bald guy. Okay, I'm like making a video. I'm balding in here. I'm bald. I've been balding for decades, 2 decades. But there's a couple things that uh, some scientists and doctors will say. Number one, you have a higher risk, I guess they say maybe cancer, okay, prostate cancer, things like that. And because of it's just a sign. Okay, the second thing they say is you have a higher. I am reading notes. I got some notes here. Okay, so I'm not going to wing this one completely. The other thing is heart disease. So men could, you have a higher chance of heart disease if you start balding early. So you got to think about these things. And the other one, which is not surprising to me, is Parkinson's. And we've seen a lot of all of these. Okay, and so that's a couple things. And when you're balding, there are things you could do to slow that down or stop that, or at least take certain nutrients to help all that out. So these are just signs, balding signs that can lead to future uh, health issues. Okay, now the reason the millennials, okay, why are millennials balding? There's a bunch of reasons. Okay, and some of them are kind of obvious. The hormonal changes, right? Then the autoimmune disorders, thyroid disorders. Okay, we're getting a lot of thyroid disorders, and a lot of that has to do with the air we're breathing. Our air is dirtier. We live in cities. We have a lot of pollution, and some of the pollution is actually radioactive fallouts, like low level isotopes. Okay, and that gets right because they're alpha and beta particles, and we ingest those, so they kind of get stuck up in this area, and it's a big reason why people on the West Coast. And if you guys know my radioactive videos, I talk a lot about that. So we're going to try to skip that for now because I get videos called the Nuclear Double 2, the Nuclear Double 1. I just made those videos a week ago. Check it out. They'll talk more about the thyroid stuff. Number 4 would be stress. Now, millennials are stressed out for a lot of reasons, okay? Stress causes your hair to fall out. And I'll explain the cycles of your hair in a minute. It's pretty crazy. But, these they have financial issues. Right now, most of these kids are moving back home. They're living with their parents. They can't afford to live out. 50% of 18 to 20 or 32-year-olds live at home now. Can you imagine that? And I'm sure it had a lot to do with the virus that we had, but also they have debt from college. They're stressed out from that. They also, and this is kind of interesting, they're trying to figure out a work-life balance, which is, I don't know, maybe that's what they expect today. I mean, we just got into it, man. We got degrees, we went to work. We didn't think of all this stuff. We just went and did it. Not they think about it too much, and that becomes stressful to them. And then they also wish they would have higher income. And the problem with this higher income thing is they're programmed to think they need all these things. They need brand new cars, and they can't afford new ones, so they lease them. They have to have the latest tennis shoes, and these things cost money, and they get more debt, and then they get stressed out. So we're not gonna get it. We'll make a whole video on that. That's a separate video. Okay, and now here we go. Here we go. Diet. Okay, now I'm going to get into some stuff on the back end here for everybody, but one of the biggest problems is their diet has changed, and we have more. And I don't want to beat up. There's ways we could not eat meat, but vegans and vegetarians have a higher risk of losing their hair early because of the food that they eat. Now, you could be a good vegan and you could be a good vegetarian, but man, you better know what you're doing. And they don't. They just, I'm not eating meat and I'm going to eat this. And I'll explain some of these things, because if you're going to be one of those people, then you got to have a book with you and know exactly what you're doing, because there's a lot of problems. And one is your hair is going to fall out, okay, or it's going to get brittle. So a couple things that we have problems with, and just the way this works, okay, is the way your hair grows. The first state is anagen. That's where the hair starts to grow. And usually that'll go for 2 to 6 years. Then what happens is very short-lived. It goes to this cycle called catagen. And it's like 3 days. And what happens is the follicle shrinks and your hair becomes stable. Okay? And that's where it stops growing. And that is called the telogen. Okay? And then the last one is the exogen, and that's where it falls out. And just so you know, we lose between 50, if we're healthy, and not me, I'm going to lose less because I have less hair, but full heads of hair people, if they're healthy, they will lose 50 to 100 hairs per day. That's it. So when you start, people complain in the shower, they're losing all kind of hair and they're pulling it out. It's like, you got to get on the internet and figure out what you're missing. And I'll talk about some of these things. And you can stop that from happening. Another thing with hair is that, that your hair is kind of like a fingerprint of everything that you've eaten, everywhere you've been. If you've had any poisons, things like that, they're all in your hair. If you had too much of this, you can do that just by taking a hair, and that hair will have a whole history of what you've done the entire time, and it stays there. So moving on here. So basically, the problem is with the vegan and the vegetarian diet is that one thing is that it reduces the protein consumption, okay? Also, which then reduces zinc, vitamin B, and other nutrients, okay? And so they did a test. Okay, let me switch here. So we'll talk about those in a second. So it's the protein, okay? And then the next thing that happens also with millennials, and this is from the American Psychology Association, I think it's the APA, and they said that these kids, younger kids, tend to be more lonely and more isolated. Now that might be a lot to do with the games they play all day on the computers and things like that. But they say these kids have like 3 to 4 close friends that they associate with, and a lot of times they feel isolated and lonely, and that can cause some stress. Okay, so that's added to the stress list we were talking about a minute ago. Then another thing these kids are doing is they're bleaching their hair. Okay, And the bleaching is causing problems to the hair follicles, okay? And that's causing issues with hair to fall out. Another thing that people do are they're using a lot of those hair extensions, okay? I don't know anybody who uses them, but apparently those weights cause weakening of the follicles, okay? So let's get back now to the vegan. And so basically, when they eat food, they lack the protein, okay? And some protein in meat is iron. Okay, now iron, iron is necessary. Okay, if you don't have enough iron, you're gonna have a problem. You get anemia. Okay, and the thing is, when you eat meat or an animal-based type food, the iron's different than a supplement. So iron that comes from an animal, you're absorbing 20% of it. 20% is going to be absorbed into your body. But if you take a non-meat type iron supplement, you're only going to absorb 7% of it. Okay. So the absorption of the iron is different and as a supplement or as a meat. Now, yes, people will use nuts and they'll use spinach and whole grains. But the thing is, like I said, you need to, if you're going to do this, I guess you have to have a book with you and you got to really follow it. And it's going to take a while to learn. It's like a Bible kind of thing. You got to read the whole thing. And if you want to know about it, right? And otherwise, you're going to be missing out somewhere. So, so that is one thing. Number two is the B12. So when you're eating an animal, you tend to the B12 is different than from a supplement. So you're taking more of it in. And what does that do? B12 maintains what red blood cells. I'm not a doctor here, but it gives you higher energy levels, and it 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 helps your hair follicles. It makes them stronger. Okay, if you're taking supplements of B12, you're not going to absorb as much of it. Or if you're not even getting B12, what happens? You get dry skin, right? And you dry scalp, and we know what happens then. Your hair starts to fall out, and you get dandruff, and and you start to have follicles fall out more than you're supposed to. And so the B12 is very important, and it's hard to absorb B12 on a vegan diet. Okay, if you're a meat diet, you got protein, and there's a bunch of chemicals that happen when you're eating meat. So you're getting more B12 if you eat meat, and less if you're not, and which means you're gonna have to find some kind of supplements. Okay. Number three would be biotin. Okay, and basically, that's the B vitamin family. Okay, and this is kind of crazy, but I didn't know about this, and I read this, and it says it stimulates the keratin. Okay, and when you have the biotin, and you meat eaters get a lot of that, it stimulates keratin. And what does keratin do? Increases growth, follicle growth. And so, I'm not sure if I start taking a lot of that, if I'll start to grow hair again. I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not. I don't need to worry about my hair. I think I look fine. I wear hats once in a while. But so biotin is a huge player. Okay. So if you're not getting biotin, then you're going to have a ton of hair loss. Okay. And you're going to have to figure out how to put that into your diet. Okay. If you eat meat, you're going to get it. Okay. Now, our body does produce some of this naturally, but not enough. Okay. Not enough. So you almost have to take supplements or you want to eat meat. Okay. So these are things that come naturally. And they come good, and we absorb them from eating animals. So vegans will try to substitute like sweet potato, cauliflower, peanuts, onions, tomatoes, avocados, and then interesting is nutritional yeast, which I guess yeast, and of course B7. So the thing is, when you're doing this, are you just going to eat peanuts? So you're going to know, I don't know how much you got to eat of all this to make all this happen. Okay. But that's where you're going to have to study and learn. Another thing is zinc. Okay. So if you're eating meat, you're getting a lot of zinc. Okay. And other than that, you're trying to get zinc from other supplemental food or supplements. And if you don't have enough zinc, what happens is a couple things happen. One, you're going to have dry skin. Number two, you're going to have brittle nails. Okay. And you're going to get sick more. So that's why, like, in the wintertime, they say take your zinc because we get these colds and these flus and things. So the zinc comes with some of the meat, okay? And as far as the plant-based food, they say it contains this, I don't know how to say it, citrus, Phytis, citrus acid. And that basically um, prevents absorption of zinc. So when you're eating plant-based food, that food apparently is slowing down your potential absorption of zinc. So that could be an issue, right? So because zinc causes dry skin, brittle hair, brittle nails. I mean, your hair breaks, it doesn't grow. So the next thing, and this is cysteine, cysteine, okay, and they say that it basically makes up 14% of we just talked about the keratin, okay? And if you don't have enough of that, then the hair becomes brittle, weak, and it breaks. And and so again, that's another thing that comes with meat. All right. And basically they call that the glue. The glue that holds your hair together is what that's called. Cysteine. And you should do your own research on this, okay? I had a hard time finding some of this stuff. It wasn't on the first page of Google. And so you have to when you're searching stuff, you gotta throw in some tag words and read other people's articles. And sometimes the articles will refer to references and you check those out. And so, your diet is huge on here. So it's the glue that holds the hair together, okay? And basically what vegans will do to substitute that, the tofu, okay? They're using tofu, lentils, walnuts, chickpeas, okay? And yes, these supplements, in this particular case, these supplements work pretty good. So there's certain things you can get as a vegan where it actually works for you. And so this would be one of them. The next thing is I was interesting was lysine, 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 and that's something that it's an amino acid, and it's something our body doesn't really produce. Okay, and what that does is it keeps elasticity of your hair. So, and the way you get these, I hate to say this, is beans. So both vegans and meat eaters need to eat beans. Okay, if you want to have elasticity and you want to have your hair be stronger, you can do that. Now, moving down the line, we're getting to the protein here in a minute, and this one is called selenium, selenium. Okay, now this stuff here you need. Okay, unfortunately, if you have too much of it, it's a problem. So this was a tough one, and I try to find out what causes a lot of problems with this. And the one you don't want to eat, I would say stay away from. It says Brazil nuts will cause this problem. So you want to be careful with these. It says like if you eat two a day, you're okay. And I don't know what a Brazil nut is, but I'm not going to eat any at this point. But it can cause you to vomit, fatigue, major hair loss, okay, thyroid issues, energy levels go down. So be careful, but you got to have some of that. So, you got to have some of that. And I'm not sure chemically how much of that our body produces. And then, of course, we have protein, okay? And they say that the hair is made up primarily 80 to 95% of our hair is made from protein. And meat eaters get protein, right? Now we have to somehow get protein up here if we're not eating meat. And so here's some of the things you can do, but you gotta know how much. And I don't know, but like for example, to get your iron, um, you know, dark chocolate, which I'm not going to eat, but lentils, spinach, nuts, and ready for this, man, you people that get baked potatoes and you take the skin off, you got to eat that skin, okay? And and you know what? At the last part of this chapter, at the last parts, I'll tell you what we can all do that'll save us. Maybe not all our hair loss, but will definitely help us out. Protein, obviously nuts, beans. Now look at this soy-based food, and some people aren't into that whole tofu, soy-based food. Um, so I'm not sure about all that. Okay, nutritional yeast again, and then they say vegan protein powders. So there are protein powders you could buy, but they're not the same. We talked about zinc, but the way you could get zinc if you don't want to take it, you could just eat pumpkin seeds. And when you buy your pumpkins, take the seeds out. And I've done it. I just wash them and I dry them, and they taste great. Cashews, almonds, chickpeas, kidney beans. Now the biotin. to get that to help your hair, um, make your hair longer, last. We're not just going to talk about these millennials. We talk about why they're losing it, and some of the reasons. But if this is for anybody with hair, peanuts would be biotin. Rolled oats, mushrooms, avocados, and all kind of seeds. The lysine, here we go. Tofu, I don't know about that. Soybean, or you know, yeah, maybe kidney beans, lentils, chickpeas, and then the cysteine would be soy, nuts, and oatmeal. And all these things will help. And eggs. Calvin said eggs, yes. And oh, I'm sorry, I should be reading the comments here. I'll try to catch them. They come on and go away. Now this is kind of interesting, and this could be a problem for me too because dairy. You got to be careful on dairy apparently, as far as your hair goes because but the eggs are good, but if too much of it, they say that the dairy has high levels of fat, and they said that. And then this is kind of weird. It increases testosterone, which is good for one thing, but maybe bad for your hair, right? And if you have too much of that, ready for this? You ever see people got like white powder all over, dandruff, psoriasis, major hair loss. So people that eat a lot of dairy can have a lot of hair loss. Okay. So now we're going to get into one of the reasons why we're all losing our hair, not just millennials. And this is, when I grew up, you know, everybody had hair. I mean, if we had a couple kids that may have been that had leukemia, and I got videos. What I think about some of that, a lot of it I think is radiation, fallout, and chemicals and that kind of thing. But most of the kids had hair, whereas today you see these kids and they're shaving their hair and in their 20s and 30s. And when I was a kid, I would eat one apple and I got nutrients from that one apple. The problem with that apple today is that the farm soil doesn't have the nutrients for that one apple. And then they modified all kind of stuff, okay, chemically modified GMOs. And so you need to eat like 9 of those apples for the same apple I used to eat. So we have a lot of things, okay, going on with our food. It's not the same as it used to be. So one of the biggest issues is GMO. And people don't, understand there's genetically engineered or modified food, and there's genetically modified GMO, so modified and engineered. So what they do with the GMO is they basically combine things, okay? Plants, animals, and bacterium, and they change the genes around. And then they make them resistant, and they use pesticides and genetically engineered also. Now, what's happening is a lot of these have way less nutrients. And so less nutrients means hair loss, okay? And so that's a huge issue is because we're now eating more and more of these GMOs, okay? And genetically, and here's the thing. The FDA doesn't even require labeling. Some countries require labeling. In America, they don't require it, man. So you don't eat if anything that comes to California, you don't know where it's coming from. It could be coming from Japan. It could be radioactive. Okay, and they've raised our radiation levels of our food. You could be eating radioactive food, and it's okay. And so you don't know what you're eating when you're going to the store. It looks beautiful, and everyone's always worried about how pretty the things look. They look pretty for a reason, okay? And so they do not have the nutrients that most of the stuff doesn't, okay? And that's why, you really got to think about a garden, seriously, because when you have a garden, you brought in the dirt, you planted it, okay? If you start in your basement, earlier, you watered it with your water, maybe from the gutters, okay? Maybe use city water, maybe if you're going to use city water, sometimes it's good to let it sit for a day so the chlorine vaporizes out of it. At least you know what you're not spraying it with anything. You know what you're getting, and you could buy the seeds. You could buy heirloom seeds. There's a lot of companies that sell heirloom seeds. So the next thing is these kids are eating is they don't cook. I mean, I do home inspections. I go to these kids' houses. First of all, they overpay for these homes. And you go to the refrigerator, there's nothing in there, man. There's like a pizza box and something they order or something they got delivered. And so they're eating delivered food and processed food. And they're always like, oh, what restaurant we going to? And they wonder why they're always broke. And so fast foods and cereals are no good either. So that is another issue. We're not getting the nutrients from the food. Okay, now also the food that we're getting, you got to clean, and it's hard because you got to clean it with baking soda. You got to clean it with vinegar because there's all kind of stuff on it. Okay, sugars, artificial sugars. I don't need to say anything about that. High fructose. These are all things that that don't help our hair follicles. Okay, and so you basically need real food and real fruits and vegetables and natural nutrients, and so which brings me to gardening. I mean, here's the thing that you watch TV and like, oh, the deer ate all my food or the pests got it. And like, I went to a party yesterday and I talked to a few people. I'm not gardening. I can't garden because the animals get to it. And so a lot of people haven't even tried this. They just, it's like, they program you. Oh, the animals, the bugs, the bugs. And you're like, oh, you get brainwashed and they don't want you growing food. They don't want you growing food because you control what you're eating. You'll make less visits to the hospital if you have your own food. And there's nothing. Well, why do you have a backyard, anyways? I mean, people got backyard. We have a bee problem. So what do? You kill the dandelion, which is the best possible food you could eat. Dandelion is gold in your body. And what you do, you spray chemicals on her, so you got a green grass, so you and your neighbor can argue who's got nicer grass. And then you waste your front yard with flowers. Okay, flowers, bees, we like that. They're pollinators. We need the flowers. But you don't have to have flowers you can't eat. There are flowers you can eat. Maybe you get flowers that are tea. You know, utilize your real estate, man. And you're not utilizing real estate by growing grass. And then you're gonna cut the grass. It grows so quick. Then you water the grass, and you got a riding mower. And now you buy an electric car to save the planet. But here you're using gas for your. Or matter of fact, you don't even do that. You're not even home when they cut the grass. You pay somebody to do it, and they show up with their gas fire systems. And as long as you don't see it, right? Well, anyways, so you want to definitely, to slow down. If you got like allergies, now here's some of the things that this stuff not only doesn't just cause you hair loss, but hypertension, infections, diabetes, anemia, cancer. Your immune system gets crashed. When your immune system goes down, somebody sneezes in an elevator, man, you're getting sick because your immune system's down. And how's it down? You got too much electricity in your body. You don't ground yourself. You got the wrong light bulbs in your house, or you're living in like an antenna. I got videos on that. You should check those out. Your digestive system goes down the tubes. And so what we need to do here, and I'm not going to save everybody's hair, but they say organic food, and you got to be careful with that. But you're in organic food means your backyard. You can do a lot of stuff in your backyard, and you can go to orchards. We got peach orchards, and you could ask them what they spray, and they'll tell you. And then you'll know, okay, we got to wash this with baking soda. We got to wash this one with whatever. Okay, or you go to places that don't have them, and then of course, corn. If you don't want GMO corn, you better get used to a worm in your corn. Okay, because a lot of times you just cut the top of the worm off, and the corn's still good. It doesn't taste as good as GMO. But so and then if you're gonna buy stuff, if you can't pronounce it, don't buy it. Anything 2-3 syllables is not going to work. So, and then of course limit sugar. So vegans and vegetarians lose their hair much quicker. Young kids are losing their hair at astronomical rates. And these are women that are starting to lose their hair too and thinning out. And when they shower, they should think about, how many hairs they're losing per day. You take a shower and there's 20 hairs in there. That's a lot of hair because you got the rest of the day to lose the other 80. And so you really need to check into this. Some of these things I talked about, I spelled them out. Check them out. Anyways, hey, please rate, subscribe. Also, I do have a service. I'm really a home inspector. That's what I do for a living. And I have a service, Call Marko with a question. Just Google Call Marko, M-E-R-K-O with a question. And I usually solve a lot of homes problems. Hey, thanks, Calvin, for coming on. And yeah, Calvin, you know how much eggs cost, Calvin, today? They're $4 and $5. $4 and $5. I don't know what's going to happen at the grocery store here, but everything's going crazy. Another reason why you want to convert your backyards and your front yards. Hey, be the first person on a front street not to plant flowers this year. Why don't you plant broccoli and have broccoli on one side, chamomile on the other? It's going to look beautiful. The bees are going to love it. And then your neighbor's like, wow, this guy could eat his front yard. That's what you want to do. That's how you win the game. That's how you win the game. And so, hey, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Please rate, subscribe. Also, if I have time, I put some products. I am an Amazon affiliate, so if you're going to buy stuff on the internet, you can get it from me. I'll put a link on the bottom. Click it, and hey, I got a bunch of videos. Most of the videos I've been doing lately are on the live section, so check those out. I got some goofy shorts I do. I'm just playing around with the shorts. You don't need to watch any of those, but watch the live videos this year. And then I still have 800 videos on my main channel. So, hey, thanks for coming on.